Okay, some more JavaScript. So what we're going to do this week is we're going to take last week's example and we're going to extend it, which means we're going to add some more functionality to it. So if we see last week, what we did last week was we were studying arrays and objects, and we built just a little list of names. We have a button here where I can create a new name and save that. We've got some error checking in here to make sure that these things aren't blank. um, and so forth. And I can cancel that and open and close that form. So, so what we're going to do is this week we're going to add a column. So we're going to add another column here. I'm just going to add let's just make something up. Let's add the middle name to the list here, and we're gonna make sure that the middle name uh, is at least one character long. And so the So and then also we're going to add the ability to remove a name from the list we're going to add a delete button, and we're going to add an edit button so that you'll be able to change the names as well as get rid of the names from your list. And we're going to do all that in our array. So if we look at the code that we built to do that, I've got this. This is the HTML file that we had. It's a pretty simple HTML table. It's got just a div here that has a table in it. That is the table that is being rendered. That's the table that's being rendered here in that div. And then down here, we have this form that I've created using a couple of inputs and a couple of buttons. I'm not using the submittable form. That you can do that, but it requires an extra step to disable the automatic behavior of the form. So I'm just using the buttons and the inputs outside of that. And I got a save and a cancel button, and I've wired them up with some on-click events in the HTML. And then that form is, of course, what we're looking at here down on the bottom. Okay. All right. So now let's go ahead and let's do the first things first is let's add a column. Okay. So I want to add a middle name column here. So what I want to do is I want to come into my JavaScript. I want to open my JavaScript, open my HTML. Let's just add a middle name here um, to the table. Okay. That adds the middle name. Let's render that, see what it looks like. Okay, so now my middle name is rendering in the wrong place, or my last name is rendering in the wrong place because I put the middle name in between two existing columns. I need to change my JavaScript code. So we come here to JavaScript and we say add the row is where we're adding the names. And so I'm just going to add something in here. And for now, I'm just going to say I'm just going to add a blank because we don't have a middle name yet. Okay, but again, because I'm extending, I'm just doing one step at a time. I'm just going to focus on one feature at a time that I want to do. So now that's rendering in the right place. When we refresh that, we should probably move this new name over. What we probably should do is maybe um, make this names take up these first two columns here, and then put the new name button here under the last column. So we can do that by adding a call span on this bottom line in the HTML. Here in the footer, we just do a call span equals 2. And then when we do that, it's going to make that cell take up 2 columns and move our button over. Okay. Now we need to actually collect the middle name. So first things first is let's put it in the object. So remember we have this list of names, which is an array, and then we've created this save name method that we can use to save to save to create names and put them in the array. So let's go ahead and just in our test data, let's go ahead and add a middle name. My middle name is actually Bill, so I'm not sure so actually William. So let's just say, I'll just make up a middle name. Let's just say Bill. Let's just say Bob. Okay, and then we can hear, I don't know what Anthony Kiedis' last name is, but we'll just say David. And then, so now we're passing 3 arguments to save name. Save name is defined right here. We need to add a parameter to receive the third argument. So we're receiving, this is the first name, this is the last name, this is the middle name. So we want to put middle right there in the right place. And then we want to go ahead and add that as a property to our object. Okay. So now we have all those names in the array, if we go back and reload, we can see that they're in the array, but uh, didn't render um, because I haven't done that part of the code yet. But if we look at the names here, we can see that the middle names are all in there in the code. And I'm just inspecting the names array in the console here. So it's in there. I just have to, the data's in my array. I just need to render it on the page. So now we do that by saying on the render table, we come down here to our add row, name.middle. Okay. And there it is. Okay. So now we've added a field. Okay. Now we need to add it to our form here. So I need to add another input box, and then we'll need to do the work to validate it uh, and store it in the array. So come down here to the input box. I'm just going to cut and paste because I'm lazy and I don't like to type. Middle name, and we'll rename that middle name. Okay. Render that. There's the middle name. Okay, but still when we put anything in here, it's still not going to be saved because we have undefined here, and our parameters are all out of order. And this is because we haven't updated that part of the code yet. So let's go ahead and update that part of the code. Once the middle name is in there, when I click the save button, I run this function validate form in my script. So let's find validate form. This says errors. This is doing the error validation. Um, we can just do another not blank. Okay, so the validation on this one is actually the same. So if we wanted to do a numeric validation, remember we did that. We did numeric validation in a previous assignment. And so numeric validation, instead of just doing not blank, we would come in here and we would retrieve our value, and then instead of testing the length, we would convert it using a parseInt method to try to convert it to a number, and then we would check for nan. So we would use um, the isNan function on that instead of using the length. Still a Boolean expression in an if statement, but it's instead of testing the length, we're testing nan. We could also test, say we wanted a zip code, for example, or a phone number. We could test that the value, a phone number is 10 digits. We could verify that the user entered only numeric value by using the isNan test, the parseInt and the isNan test, and then we could test the length of the string value. So we could get the string, we could test to make sure it's at least 10 characters, then we could try to convert it to a number using parseInt, and then we could test isNan, and those two things together would determine if it was a 10-digit number. You can do the same, a 5-digit number, a zip code, or whatever you want using the same process. But we have collected we'll do the error check on the middle name. So let's go ahead and refresh that, see if that does. So now if I'm getting the red box here, and if I put something in it, I'm getting the validation. So my validation on the middle name is working. Okay, so now let's actually save it. So now we come down here. So once the validation is passed, if there are no errors, then if there are errors, then I do the alert. If there are no errors, then I collect the data from the input boxes, and I update save name, then I render the table and I hide the form. Okay, let's see if that works. Middle here. Okay, all right, that works. Okay, great. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to put an edit button. So I'm going to add another column here, a fourth column. But in that column, I'm going to render some buttons. So just like I have new name here, I'm going to render a button that says edit. Okay, so let's see if we can do that. So to render that, remember we do that in the add row method. That's how we're getting rows into our table. So let's go ahead and just add a row here. And what I'm going to do is so I'm going to use a button to this. So I'm going to say button. Okay, let me just get rid of that. Okay, so I'm going to create a button. The button's going to look something like this. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this. I'm just going to copy that so that I have an example of what I want it to look like. So it's going to be button. It needs to have, doesn't really need to have an ID. It does need to have an on-click value though. So because if I click this button, I'm going to need to do something with the fact that I clicked it. So on click, and we're going to call that edit name. And notice I'm using here up here I have the double quotes. I'm going to use the single quote here because I can't put double quote inside because this is changing my concatenation. So I'm going to use a single quote, and it should work. Should work. We'll see if it doesn't work. We'll fix it. So we're going to do edit name, and then that's going to close, and then we're going to close the button, and then we're going to have here what's in the button. So this is going to be edit. That's the label of the button, and then we close the button like that. I think that'll do it. Let's see. Does that do it? That does not do it. We got an error. So render table is not defined. Unexpected token. So I have an error in my, oh, it's here. I forgot to delete that. Duh. Okay, so yeah, so now we have the edit button. So now if we click that, nothing happens because edit name is not defined. Okay, so because I haven't written the function yet, so nothing's happening. So but when we look at edit name here, we see that we've added that button. Now the edit, this is not quite done because when I click this edit, I need to know which one am I editing. So am I editing the first one or the second one or the third one or the fifth one or whatever? So what I need to do is I need to pass a parameter, an argument with this on click to say which entry in the array that I'm editing. So in this case, this is entry 0 in the array because it's the first one. Remember, arrays are zero based, so this is an array of length 2. And this is the 0 element, and this is the 1 element. And it has length of 2. There's 2 elements, but this one is indexed as 0. This one is indexed as 1. So when I click this button, I want to pass the index of the I want to pass the index of the row. So in this case, I want to pass the index of 0. I want to pass the index of 1. So how do we do that? Well, what we need to do is when we create the row, we need to include a value called index. Okay, so when we call add row, we're going to need to tell add row what index value are you using. And then here, I'll do some concatenation. So I'll pass this as a parameter. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to concatenate index. Okay, and that should do it. So now when we pass index, we pass that into add row. We're going to add that as a parameter to the table. Okay. Now we call add row in the render table function. So we're passing names at I. So I is our index. So we just put I as a second argument. Okay. Now let's refresh that. We can go ahead and look at this option. We can see that we're getting edit name 0 right there. Okay, and on this one, if I right click and say inspect, we're getting edit name 1. Okay, so that's good. So now we know when I click this, I want to edit the array, the name in the array at position 1. Okay, and when I click this one, I want to edit the name in the array at position 0. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that edit now. So let's write the edit name function. It accepts one parameter, which is going to be the index. Okay. Now how do we edit? So, well, what we do is we want to take the values, because remember when we click new name here, we open the form and we clear all the boxes out. Okay. What we want to do is when we click edit, we want to open the form, but want to preload these boxes with the values from my row. Okay. So what do we do first? Well, let's load those arrays. So we know that we're using names. We're using names at index. Okay, is the name we're editing, and so we want to put the data from names into the inputs. Okay, document dot get element by ID, and so it's just like we did here, first name, etc. Only we're going the other direction. Instead of retrieving the value from the text box, we're putting something in it. Get the element, and it's going to be first name and the value is going to equal names at index dot first name. Okay, let's just run that, and then we have to unveil the form. So we do that by saying show form, but see, well, we got a problem here. So show form is actually clearing all the values out. That's a tough one. Okay, so what do we do now? So, well, let's see. So what we want to do is instead of doing the edit, what we want to do here, okay, let's change up again a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to say on what we're going to do is we're going to take this show form value and we're going to put it in another function. We're going to call that function clear form. Okay, and then we're going to take this out. And so that means that now we won't clear the form every time we show the form. So we'll have to come back and make sure that we clear that form in the right way. Okay, let's load this and see what it looks like. Okay, I've got an error on the page somewhere. New name is not showing the form anymore. Okay, so when I edit, I want to so let's leave this one in. So this last one is made a mistake there. This last one is this is actually the value that turns the form on. So this is clearing the contents. Okay. And so that's still good. That's what we want to do, but we don't want to do it every time we show the form anymore. Okay. So so now what we can do is we can so now and then this document get element by ID changing the style is we're turning that form, the div around that form on and off by changing the display from none to block and back to none when we hide it. So so now when we show the form, okay, the form is still there, okay, but we've lost a bit of functionality because when I cancel this, you know, this form still has data in it. So let's fix that real quick before we go. So when I cancel the form, at that cancel button, it calls this method called hide form. So let's find hide form. And what we're going to do is we're just going to call this clear form right in here. Okay. And we'll just call it clear form right there. Okay. Actually, I don't need to make that into a whole separate method. I'll just put those. So now instead of clearing out the text boxes when we show the form, we're clearing out the text boxes when we hide the form. That means that we can that we'll be able to control what data we show when we display. Okay, let's make sure that works. Okay, all right, that seems to be working. Okay, okay. So that was that was a little bit of that might have been a little confusing what just happened there. But what happened is in extending our program, we found something that wasn't going to work. In this case, the clearing of the values was being done when we turned the form on, and that was causing us a problem because now instead of we don't always want it to be blank every time we see it, we want it sometimes we're going to want to have something in it, like if we're editing. And so that was causing an error. So I had to change up my implementation from my previous program a little bit to do that. Okay, so that happens. All right. So, you got to be flexible. So, okay, so now let's go back to editing. So if we click edit, what we want is to pop up the form and we want to populate it with these three fields. So come back here to edit. So let's just do one and then let's say show form is what we do. Okay. And if we hit edit, okay. All right, that seemed to work. We got the first name, we just didn't code the rest of it. So let's go ahead and code the rest of it. I'm just going to cut and paste, save myself some typing. Cut and paste is fine. Just make sure you fix it all. Otherwise, you get a mess. Okay. All right. Cancel, new name, cancel, edit. Okay. Look what happened there. When I click save, I got a new name instead of editing the one I want. Okay. See what happened again? Let's do this one. So when I click edit, when I click save, instead of editing, what I wanted to happen is I wanted to update this row, but instead what I got is a new row. Okay. That's because the form is intended to be saved. There is no edit functionality built into the form. Okay. So we've got this edit name where we are displaying the box. But now when we click the validate form, we need to know that, look, the form is being displayed to edit, not to save. Okay, so we still want to do the validation the same way. But here, when we go to save, we may want to do an update instead of a save. And then we want to render the table and hide the form again. So in this case, we need an if statement here that says if I'm editing, then then do an update. If I'm adding, then do a save. But how do I know what state the form is in? Well, currently we don't. So what we need to do is we need to add a hidden field to the form so that we can keep track of what the state is. So I'm going to come back in here into the form. I'm going to add another input. Okay, and the type is going to be hidden. And then the ID is going to be, uh, we'll call it, what we'll do is we'll put a special value in there. So if we're editing, we're going to put the index of the array that we're editing. So it'll be 0, 1, 2, 3. If we're adding, we'll just put a special value of -1. So we'll say name index is what we'll call that. Okay. And so now a hidden input is just a different type. It's in the form, and it does not display it on the screen, but it's still there. You can still read it. It's a way for you to keep track of state and other things on the page without them being visible to the user. So let's see what that looks like. So now what we need to do is when we load this form, when we show the form, we need to set the value of this field. So if we come back in here to our JavaScript, so if I go to if I click the add button, so when I click the new button, I hit show form here. Okay, so let's just go ahead and put in a, uh, a value there, new. So let's see, what's the best way to do this? We want to pass around the value that we have. So we need to figure out where we can get the Okay, so here we say show form. When we say show form, we want to, this is a new one. So with show form, we want to, okay, I'm going to change my mind again. Okay, so here when we do show form, instead of putting the hide, what we're going to do is, right now we have show form and we have edit form, which is just calling show form, okay? But I'm going to change that up. So I'm going to, what I'm going to do here on show form is um, I'm going to just pass the index in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move these fields back. And then here I'm going to say document dot get element by ID, and it's going to be my name index. That's the hidden field, right? And I'm going to set that as a value of -1. Okay, but it actually has to be a number, right? So not a text, not string. Okay, let's look at that on the form. Okay, let's go. We can go ahead and open the elements, and we can actually look for that form. And if we click new name, then we can see here that my index has a value of -1 in it. Okay. Now notice how this is showing as a string value. We're going to have to deal with that later because we want it to be numeric. In order for us to use it, it's going to have to be numeric. So we'll have to do parsing on that. Okay. So that is working on the add. So now what I want is on the edit, because if I come in here and I click edit, notice that my value is still -1. Okay, so that's not right. That should have been oh, I'm not getting my fillers either. Okay, so that should be a 1 or a 2 or something like that. So So let's come down to edit form here. Um, and what we want to do is we want to take the statement that turns the form on, and instead of calling show form, we're just going to turn the block on. And then here we're just going to say document dot get element by ID, name index, and here we're just going to put in the index. So now this will be 0, 1, 2, 3 if we're editing, and it will be -1 if we're adding. Okay, let's make sure that works. New name, blank form. The in my form, the value is -1. Okay, cancel that. Click edit. Oh, I got an error. Left-hand side in assignment. What does that mean? Script edit names line 72. Invalid left-hand side in the assignment. Equals. Oh, I forgot I left out the dot value. Edit. Okay, so now it's got the right information in it. And when I look at the elements, we can see that the value is 0, which is what I wanted it to be. Now the value is 1 because that's what I wanted it to be. And if I do new name, then the value is -1. So that's my special value. Okay. So you see that how it's changing here, right here? Okay. All right. So now in this hidden field, I know what the name, what element we're editing in the list. Okay. Great. So now what do I do when I save it? So now when I save it, I want to come back here and um, on the validate form. Okay. Once we know it's valid, then what I want to do is I want to get the index. So I'm just going to pull that out of the hidden field. Okay, so now I'll be able to test index. I'm going to want to do a parseInt on this because I need to use it as a number. Because to see if we look at the way it's in the value, it's got double quotes around it, which means it's going to come in as a string. But I want to use it as an integer. Okay, so I do a parseInt on it. This will convert it to an integer if possible. If it's not convertible to an integer, if it's got invalid numeric data in it, then this will be nan, N-A-N. But we're controlling this, so we know it's going to be right. Okay, so then what I do is here, if I say if index equals -1, whoops. If index equals -1, then save. Else, what we want to do is we want to edit the name. So now what do we do? Well, we just change the value. So we can say names dot, we can say names at index dot first, because names, remember names is an array. Okay, but names at index is our object. Okay, because names at index resolves to one of the names. And so now that we have an individual name, we can use the properties. And we can just replace that with whatever we got from the text box. So let's run one of those and see if it works. Let's edit this one. If I change the name to Harry and click save, look at that. Updated Bill to Harry. So let's do it again. I refreshed. Let's change this one. Let's change Anthony to Tony. And when we click save, what we should see is that this value will change from Anthony to Tony. All right, perfect. If we do new name, and we click save, then that works. If we click edit, that didn't save. Wonder what's going on there. Okay, so something happened there. So what happened there? So see what's happening is with this new one, with this new field that we added, we're not getting the edit functionality properly. So I wonder what's causing that. Let's see, does it still work up here? Still works there. Not working there. Okay, so why doesn't it work? So if we click edit here, let's look and see what our index is doing. Value of 2. Okay. So here, this is a great opportunity to show the debug options here. So let's see, let's look at it first and see what we can see. So if index is equal to -1, then save, otherwise. Oh, I just didn't finish. That's what happened. I changed the middle name, but I haven't actually implemented the logic to change the first name yet. So if we change the first name, then of course it updates. Ugh. The bug is that I didn't code the logic. Okay, so now names at index, let's go ahead and finish. Dot middle equals middle, and then names at index dot last equals last. Okay. And then there's no save here because this is just editing the array directly, and then we render the table and hide the form, and everything's good. So let's refresh that. Let's see if it works this time. So we can say first, middle, last. Save that. Edit this. Let's see, Bill's middle name. We'll change it from Bob to John. All right. And then we can edit this one. We'll change the last name to last name. Okay. All right. So the edit functionality is working there. Now, I apologize for that, but I made a mistake. I made an error when I was doing that. And so, um, I was testing and I just lost track of where I was in the process. It happens. I've been doing this for a long time and it still happens. The um but the trick is to take a step back, look at your code, get back in line with where you are and keep going. Okay. So now that's done. So the last thing I want to do is I want to be able to delete one from the row here. So delete is going to be basically the same way as edit, right? Because we're going to add a delete button here next to the edit button. Remember, the edit button has a parameter on it so that we know which row we're editing. The delete button will have the same thing. So we'll know that we want to delete row 0, and then we'll just remove that from the array. Okay. So what we need to do is we need to add a delete button here. So let's find out where we added the add row. So that's here. Oh, look at that. I left out the NTD button there, which is actually good because I want to see. Notice let me undo that. So see, I did a TD here and I did my button, but I forgot to close the TD tag. But yet Chrome is being forgiving and is not messing me up on that. So that is, but my HTML was invalid there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a second button and then I'll put the TD tag at the end. Okay. This button will be called delete name, and then we'll have the index, the same as the edit button, and it'll be called delete. Okay. Refresh that. Oh, look at that. We should put a little space in between those. So let's go find the button CSS. See, those are too close together. Let's find the button CSS and let's put a little space in there. So here's the button padding. Here's the name form button. So this is doing margin on the top and the left of the button here. So that's this button. Or that's the save and cancel button. So this is what we want. This little bit of CSS is what we want. We've applied it to these two buttons here, but we want to apply it to these two buttons as well. So these two buttons are name form. They're inside the div called name form, and they have a type of button. The two buttons we just added are going to be, let's see, they're not in the HTML, so they're going to be here in this. We can come in here and say this button. It tells us what the CSS selector is here. So this is in the T-body which has an ID of name table, and it's a button. So what we can do is we can come back to the CSS and we can just add a second name table button. Okay, so now spaces between there. Okay, perfect. When we click delete here, we get an error on the console because we haven't written the delete name function yet. This one's going to be really easy. So So delete, we need to write a method in our HTML in our JavaScript here. Function delete name. We'll get an index as a parameter. And then what we do is we just delete it. So the way you delete it is actually a little it's actually not that obvious in, you would think it would be like a remove function or a pop function or something, like because you push things on, so why don't you pop them off? But the way you do that, the way you delete from an array in JavaScript is using a splice function. And you can read about this. We'll put a link to the W3 Schools documentation on how that works. But this is pretty straightforward. Names. So I take the array and then I want to splice the array, which means I want to divide it into pieces and then take something out and splice it together. So the way the splice works is you say, where do you want to begin splicing? And then how many do you want to splice? So where do you want to begin removing and how many do you want to remove? So I want to say I'm going to start at index and I want to remove one. Okay. That's it. That's how you get it out. And then you render the table again. Okay. All right. Let's try that. Delete the first element. Gone. All right. So now if we come back and we look at names in the console, we can see that it's only got one row in it. So if we add a new name, we can save that. Let's go ahead and add Bill back. Okay. Let's delete this one. All right. That seems to be working. Okay, great. That's that. So what did we do? So the first thing we did is we were extending our project. Okay. So notice the very first thing I did is I made a copy of my project, right? Because I had it working from last week. So I didn't, and I did that before the video started, but I had it working from last week and I'm going to make a bunch of changes to it. I want to make sure I make a backup of where I was when I started, because if I really screw it up and get in trouble, then I want to be able to go back and look at what I had to begin with. Right. So before I even started the video, I actually made a copy. So I had a week 12 folder last week that we were working on, and I just copied all my stuff into a week 13 folder so that I could make changes to it. So, but I still have my week 12 unchanged so that if I ever wanted to look at it, I could look at it. So that's the first thing I did is I made a copy. I made a backup copy in case I got in trouble and made mistakes and had to start over. So then I added a middle name. So I did that by adding a field to the form and to the label. We added and to the table and to the form. So I added this input box called middle name. We added a middle name column uh, in our in our table. We wired up the JavaScript to be able to write um, on my show form to write into the middle name. We did the validation on the middle name. We had that whole nonsense where I changed my mind on how to show the form and then changed it back. So we changed the show form mid example. We changed the show form to something else and then changed my mind and put it back the way I wanted it before. So that's okay. It's okay to change your mind. And then here we have middle name, we're doing the validation. And then we came in and so we saved that. And then we went ahead and we did the edit button. So we created the edit button by adding the HTML code here. The edit button takes a parameter, which is the index. So we added a parameter to add row to say we're adding a row and it's going to be index number one or number two or zero, whatever that is. And we added that as a parameter to when we click the button so that we know in the function that's handling the click event what what element we're editing. Then we added two new functions called edit name. So when we did the edit, we get the index that we're editing as a parameter. We then we save that in our hidden field so that we know which value we're editing. And then we go ahead and populate instead of displaying a blank form, we fill the form in and then populate it. Um, and then we adjust our validate to test our hidden field. We parse it into a number, and then we tested that, and then we either did the save for creating a new one, or we did an edit here for editing one. Okay, and then the delete was really easy, really just one line, a splice on the names. Okay, so that's what we did. So this will be this example will be posted in Canvas, so you can look at it if you want as you work on your assignment for the week.